Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Vandana Dave, Research Officer, Women's Studies Research Center, Kurukshetra University. Today, I am going to discuss module Violence Against Women from paper Policies and Current Debates. This module talk about violence against women, domestic violence, trafficking of girls and women, and sexual harassment of women at the workplace. Till now, you must have acquired some knowledge of kinds of atrocities against women. In this module, we are going to explain the various forms of violence against women and the legal provisions to safeguard them. Women in modern India are in a state of a paradox. On the one hand, she is at the peak of ladder of success. On the other hand, she is mutely suffering the violence inflicted on her either by her own family members or by the community. Although the Constitution of India guarantees to all Indian women equality of opportunity to work, freedom of speech, protection of life and personal liberty, and it allows special provisions to be made by the state in favor of women, and also renounces practices derogatory to the dignity of women. But in actual sense, a lot of women are not in a condition to enjoy these constitutional rights. Not only the social evils like female feticide, child marriage, dowry are the barriers, but several other problems like crime against women, domestic violence, trafficking of women, sexual harassment at the workplace originated out of the deep-rooted patriarchal social setup hinder the upward movement of a woman. She feels unsafe not only out of the domestic boundaries but also within the four walls of the family. Despite several social legislations in place to provide women a safe environment, women are facing great disabilities. Violence against women. Many forms of violence are not even recognized as such and are ignored, condoned, or justified by involving religious, cultural, or traditional beliefs. The term violence against women refers to many types of harmful behavior directed at women and girls because of their sex. In 1993, the United Nations offered the first official definition of such violence when the General Assembly adopted the Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It says any act of gender-based violence that result in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts, coercion, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. The widespread violence against women is seen both as an indicator and means of perpetrating the subordinate status of women, which also manifests itself through various forms of structural violence such as low health status, lack of access to education and employment. Violence against women is a manifestation of unequal power relation, which has led to men's domination over and discrimination against women. It helps to keep the structure of patriarchy intact. Violence against women can be divided into two categories. First is physical, sexual, and psychological violence occurring within the community, including rape, sexual abuse, and intimidation at work or elsewhere, trafficking of women, and forced prostitution. The second one is physical, sexual, and psychological violence occurring in the family, including battering, sexual abuse of female children in the household, dowry related violence, and other traditional practices harmful to women, and non spousal violence. Violence includes physical violence. It means hitting, slapping, kicking, beating, pushing, or punching. Sexual violence includes coercive sex, rape, molestation, and harassment. Emotional violence consists of intentional attempt to humiliate and insult the person. Physical violence means any threats which are intentionally directed to humiliate or blackmail or injure the person emotionally. Economic violence is denying fulfilling economic needs, or creating financial dependence. Intimidation. It includes making women afraid by using actions, gestures, looks, and by any weapon. Isolation. It means controlling behavior like isolating women from family and friends, monitoring her movements, and restricting her access to resources. Various forms of violence against women have been categorized as crimes against women under various sections of Indian Penal Code. Rape. The threat of sexual violence aims to restricting women's physical mobility and to punish women who flout social norms in most societies. It is a common crime against women which leaves the victim suffering not just physically but psychologically too, compounded by an additional stigma. Moreover, women are held responsible to any sexual misconduct which leads to shame for a family. As per the statistics provided by the National Crime Records Bureau, in 2012, Madhya Pradesh was at the top among Indian states with 3,425 incidences of rape, which contributed to 13.74% in the total crime committed against women. Section 376 of the Indian Penal Code provides the definition and punishment of the offense of rape. It says that any penetration other than penile penetration is an offense. The punishment for rape is rigorous imprisonment of either description for a term not less than 7 years, but which may extend to imprisonment for life and a fine. Kidnapping and abduction. The reason behind kidnapping is not only money extortion but also sexual assault. Girls are being kidnapped for the purpose of forced begging, forced prostitution, blackmailing, or any other sexual crime. It was reported by the National Crime Records Bureau that West Bengal recorded the highest incidences of kidnapping and abduction with 4,168 cases, followed by 3,789 incidents in Bihar and 3,360 in Assam. Sections 363 to 369 and 371 to 373 of the Indian Penal Code deal with the crime of kidnapping and abduction. It says that whoever kidnaps or abducts any woman with intent that she may be compelled to marry someone against her will or in order to seduce sexually shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years with a fine. Sexual harassment. Section 509 of the Indian Penal Code deals with the offense regarding words, gestures, or act intended to insult the modesty of a woman, and the punishment for this abuse is imprisonment for a term extendable up to 1 year or with fine or with both. As per the recommendations of Justice Verma Committee report constituted after the Nirbhaya incidents of Delhi, Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 came into force. This section deals the sexual harassment in four ways. Section 354A says sexual harassment means a man committing any act of physical contact or advances involving unwelcome and explicit sexual overtures or a demand or request for sexual favors or showing pornography against the will of a woman or making sexually colored remarks. The punishment for this act is imprisonment for a term extendable to 3 years or fine or both. Section 354B of the Indian Penal Code is related to assault or use of criminal force to women with intent to disrobe, which means that any man who assaults or uses criminal force to any woman or abets such act with the intention of disrobing or compelling her to be naked shall be punished with imprisonment extendable to 7 years or with fine or with both. Section 354C of the Indian Penal Code deals with the offense of voyeurism. Any man who watches or captures the image of a woman engaging in a private act where she would usually have the expectation of not being observed by anyone or disseminates such image shall be punished with imprisonment extendable to 3 years on first offense and on subsequent conviction punishment extendable to 7 years and a fine. Section 354D is related to stalking. Any man who follows a woman and contacts or attempts to contact such woman to foster personal interaction repeatedly despite a clear indication of disinterest by such woman or monitors the use by a woman of the internet, email, or any other form of electronic communication commits the offense of stalking. This offense is liable to 3 years imprisonment. The highest percentage of crime under Section 509 of Indian Penal Code was recorded in Andhra Pradesh, which was 40.49%. Under Section 354 of Indian Penal Code, Madhya Pradesh was at the top with 14.67% of total crimes. Dowry and dowry death. Dowry is a payment in cash or kind given by the bride's family to the groom's family, intended to help with marriage expenses. Dowry has become extravagant and a burden on girls' family. There is no reliable statistics on the number of cases of dowry harassment and dowry deaths due to non-reporting. As per the records of National Crime Records Bureau 2012, Andhra Pradesh has the highest number of cases under Dowry Prohibition Act, followed by Odisha with 1,487 cases. With regard to cases of cruelty by husband or his relatives, West Bengal has the highest percentage, that is 18.65%. For dowry deaths, Uttar Pradesh has the highest incidences, that is 2,244. Dowry Prohibition Act 1961 defines dowry as any property or valuable security given or agreed to be given either directly or indirectly by one party to a marriage to the other party to the marriage, or by the persons of either party to a marriage, or by any other person at or before or any time after the marriage. The person guilty of giving or accepting dowry may be imprisoned for a minimum of 5 years and fined not less than rupees 15,000 or the amount of the value of the dowry, whichever is more. Domestic violence. It is a universal phenomena and also a method to keep women subordinated in a patriarchal social system. Domestic violence, in its broader sense, is violence among members of a family or members of a household. It implies any type of discrimination or violence that is inflicted by any member of the family upon the other member of the family. The relation could be both natal and nuptial. Causes of domestic violence can be broadly divided into two categories. The individual characteristics of the abuser include individual problems such as unemployment, stress, poverty, physically challenged, and lack of material resources. The another reason is the patriarchal control of men over women. The other reasons may be alcoholism, extramarital affair, attitudinal gap, not bearing a son, bringing little dowry, and many more. In the patriarchal setup, girls and women are socialized in a way that they internalize the notion of wife beating and feel that it is a right of a man to beat his wife. Now, it is an offense under the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. Defining domestic violence, the Act says an act of omission or commission or conduct which harms, injures, or endangers the health, safety, whether mental or physical, and includes physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal and emotional abuse, and economic abuse. Thus, the Act covers domestic violence in four ways. Physical violence means beating, battering, slashing, pulling hair, hitting with some object. Sexual violence includes rape, undressing forcefully, or other kind of sexual abuse. Psychological violence consists of threat to kill, torture, humiliation, threat to torture children or other family member. Economic violence includes denial of basic facilities like food, healthcare, lack of access to resources, not giving money for maintenance of self and children. Under this Act, the magistrate may pass the orders in favor of the aggrieved women. Protection order to prohibit the respondent from committing any act of domestic violence, entering the place of employment of the aggrieved women, or attempting to communicate in any form. Residence over restraining the respondent from dispossessing the aggrieved women from the shared household. Monetary relief grant of monetary relief to aggrieved women from the respondent to meet the expenses incurred and losses suffered. Custody order, temporary custody of children, then compensation order, directing the respondent to pay compensation or damage or both to the women for the injuries including mental torture and emotional distress. According to National Family Health Survey 3 conducted in 2005 and 6, one-third of the women aged 15 to 49 years have experienced physical violence and about 1 in 10 have experienced sexual violence. In total, 35% have experienced physical or sexual violence at the hands of their husbands and other family members. Trafficking of girls and women. Poor families with the desire to earn some money send their daughters to the nearby cities or towns through the mediator who sells these girls again and again to earn more profit, and these girls become easy prey to exploitation. Similarly, poor livelihood options of the village push them to being trafficked. Trafficking may be defined as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power, or of a position of vulnerability, or of the giving of, receiving the payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. Two factors are responsible for this crime. One is the personal circumstances, which includes women with low self-esteem, lack of self-control, low literacy level or awareness and information, economic deprivation, and disability. Socio-structural factors include industrialization, globalization, economic decline or underdevelopment, privatization, urbanization, environmental factors, or some political factors like immigration policies, etc. The traffickers are always in an opportunity to abduct or persuade or kidnap women and girls at the places like bus stops, construction work sites, rehabilitation areas, or even within homes. In India, Delhi and Mumbai are the main transit zones for international trafficking. The girls or women being trafficked are often used as laborers, but mostly used for prostitution, pornography, cyber sex, and sex tourism. According to the National Crime Records Bureau report 2012, Tamil Nadu, with 500 cases of immoral trafficking, was at the top among the Indian states. Section 370 of the Indian Penal Code deals with the crime of trafficking of persons. Devadasi and prostitution. Devadasi was a culturally sanctioned practice where a girl was dedicated to a deity, an object of worship, or to a temple which exploited women. The term Devadasi is a Sanskrit word, Deva, that is God, and Dasi, that is slave, literally meaning a female slave of God. The genesis of Devadasi cult and its regional variations is usually traced back to agricultural societies where young girls were voluntarily dedicated to God by their families to ensure soil fertility and to secure blessings for the community as a whole. It was believed that this custom primarily emerged as a substitute for human sacrifice. Using the concept of divine desire, priests started demanding young girls from devotees. In South India, historical and literary records show that the Devadasi system began to flourish during the Pallava and Chola dynasties from the 6th to 13th century AD. However, in many temples, the Devadasi were sexually exploited and their earnings were collected by temple authorities. The Devadasi were not allowed to marry as they were considered married to the temple deity. Such a marriage with the deity left no chance of widowhood because the deity was immortal. The Devadasis, apart from being devoted servants of the temple deity, became the symbol of the art of music and dance. In return to their services, the Devdasis were granted gifts of cash or land, which resulted in a rapid increase in the number of Devdasis being offered to the temples and also gave rise to the development of practice of prostitution in the form of Devdasi. The agitation to weed out this evil practice was started in 1868 with the coming into force in 1861 of the Indian Penal Code. The recruitment of girls for employing them as Devdasi was held an offence punishable under Section 372 of the Indian Penal Code. Another practice which exploits women sexually is the practice of prostitutes. Prostitution is a category of extramarital relations and is legally defined as illegal sexual relations for hire. The prevalence of prostitution in ancient India is referred to in Vedic as well as epic literature. The prostitutes, normally referred to as city beauties or city wives, were specially invited to dance on various festive occasions. The Indian society, although prostitution was looked down upon, prostitutes always enjoyed an honored place right from ancient times. They were granted special privileges by kings as well as religious authorities. Presently, the prostitutes are called as commercial sex workers, that is CSW, can be divided into two categories, that is professional and non-professional. Professional includes those who are running brothels or working as call girls, and the second category comprised of victims of social conditions like kidnapping, loss of financial resources of the family, loss of family, etc. The Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956 aimed to curb and abolish trafficking and prostitution of women and children as an organized means of living. Amendment to this act in 1978 says that any landlord owner, tenant, occupier is punishable if he knowingly uses the premises for prostitution or allows it for such use. Problems of Dalit women. Dalit means a person belonging to the lowest caste of the Indian society, which includes the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes. However, the term is mainly used for the scheduled caste. Dalits are still suffering from economic, political, social, and cultural deprivation. The women belonging to the Dalit community are rather in a more vulnerable state. They face double oppression in the form of being a Dalit and also a woman. Being the untouchable community, they also face oppression from the women belonging to upper caste. In the rural area, Dalit women are largely laborers employed in the agricultural sector as landless laborers, as domestic laborers for the landlords of the village, in animal husbandry, or as laborers in small scale industry of the village. In the urban sector, Dalit women are hired as daily wage earners on the construction sites, as domestic servants, and have occupied small jobs in the organized sector. Among the school dropout girls, majority are Dalits. Level of literacy is also a major reason for prevalence of some ill practices among Dalit women, like childhood marriage and superstitions. Dalit women suffer the health risk due to the inadequate quantity and inferior nutritional quality food due to their low economic status. The reservation of Dalit women in the local governance being provided through 73rd and 74th Amendment does not widen the reality of women's political visibility. Dalit women are the victims of exploitation by the upper caste, sexually or otherwise. Mass rape, public parading of naked women, social boycott, prohibiting entry to public places, and murders are the incidents reported daily in the newspapers. The hierarchical structure of Hindu society, considering Dalit women inferior and voiceless, is the reason why they are subjected to violence. They are given reservation in educational and vocational institutions, jobs, and legislatures so that they may be able to come out of the social system which condemned them to a life of poverty and social degradation and to live a life with dignity and equality. Sexual harassment at the workplace. Women have been subjected to harassment, trauma, and victimization by co workers or seniors through threat and other pressures. Employers abuse their authority to seek sexual favors from their female subordinates and sometimes promising promotions or other forms of career advancement. Women who refuse to give in to such unwanted sexual advances often have the risk of demotion or dismissal from the workplace. The type of harassment may range from physical to psychological. Harassment is defined as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of sexual nature when submission to or rejection of this conduct explicitly or implicitly affects an individual's employment, unreasonably interferes with an individual's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. In India, the issue of sexual harassment of women at the workplace attracted the attention of people related to women's movement, academicians, and the public after the brutal gang rape of a worker of a women development program when she tried to stop the child marriage as a part of her duties. The feudal patriarchs, annoyed by her courage, wanted to teach her a lesson. On behalf of that women, Vishakha, a women's rights group, filed a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court in 1997 for the first time acknowledged sexual harassment at the workplace as a human rights violation. Its judgment was called as Vishakha Guidelines, which had the effect of the law. Subsequently, in April 2013, the Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Prevention and Redressal Act was passed. It says that sexual harassment results in violation of the fundamental rights of a woman to equality, her right to life and to live with dignity, right to practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade, or business, which includes a right to a safe environment free from sexual harassment. As per the Act, sexual harassment includes any contact and advances or a demand or request for sexual favors or making equally colored remarks or showing pornography or any other unwelcome physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. The workplace means any organized or unorganized, public or private organization, enterprise, establishment or institution, hospital, sports complex, house or any place visited by the employee during the course of employment. Every employer of a workplace is abide by the law to constitute an internal complaints committee to deal with the complaints of sexual harassment. Besides this, every district officer has also to constitute a district level committee called as local complaints committee. Any aggrieved women may make a complaint of sexual harassment to the police under section 354A or to the internal complaints committee or the local complaints committee constituted under the Sexual Harassment Act. Enforcing cultural codes, caste panchayats, and honor killings. Each and every culture sets some norms or customs which have their importance for society as their function of exercising control over the conduct of individuals. Caste panchayat also set some code of conduct for the people under its jurisdiction. Khap is a term for a social political grouping and used in a geographical sense. The Khap panchayats are clan or gotra councils. The exogamous gotra of the Jats are in fact clans. The villages in which a clan is settled are organized into clan council and area under its jurisdiction is called Khap. The head of a Khap panchayat is elected in an informal manner through consensus. The villages under the jurisdiction of Khap panchayat comprise not only the Jat population of Khap but also other castes and communities. Khap panchayat is an exclusive male institution and the women have no share or say in it. Customarily, the Biradari uses these traditional panchayats to settle a variety of disputes regarding caste and intercaste matters, transgressions, questions of property rights, inheritance, and disputes which threaten the peace of the village or the immediate region. Questions of marriage and sexual affairs form a significant proportion of such disputes, and panchayats frequently intervene to impose justice according to its own definition. Retrograde decisions of certain Khap panchayats of the Jats of Haryana, such as breaking the already solemnized marriages and preventing already fixed marriages on the ground that these violate the existing and accepted practices among the exogamous gotras of Jats, have received wide publicity in media during the past few years. Under the pretext of upholding the honor of the community, they pronounce arbitrary judgments that not only violate human rights but are also humiliating. Rural, urban, and slum women. Since the socio-cultural environment of rural and urban areas differ greatly, the issues and condition of rural women also differ from those of urban. The villages are said to be the repositories of the real Indian culture, and rural women may be said to be its real custodians. In a sense, they represent true India, since the urban life is a mixture of Indian and Western thoughts and culture. Yet, life for most of the Indian rural women is not easy. They work side by side with men in the fields, fetch water from distant places, and attend to all the household drudgeries, including work related to animal husbandry. With very low opportunity to get higher education, girls are subjected to early marriages, resulted in longer fertility span, and in the absence of adequate and prompt health services, they are at higher risk of maternal morbidity and maternal mortality. Besides, some evil practices like dowry and domestic violence are much pervasive in rural areas. Caste boundaries are also stronger in rural areas, giving no space to women in respect of choice of marriages or intercaste relationships. Restriction on mobility of girls is one of the main hindrances in the process of their development. Due to her sex stereotyped role as a housewife, irrespective of clan, creed, region, or religion, she spends most of her time on household chores. One more factor which is important to discuss about rural women is their participation in the Panchayati Raj institutions. Most of them act as dummy candidates, and their male family members hold the command of all actions and decision making on behalf of them. The lives of urban women differ from that of rural women to a great extent. The urban women seldom engage themselves in agricultural related activities or the extended household activities like animal husbandry. They enjoy better infrastructural facilities of the urban area like the colleges and universities providing higher education, better health facilities, better employment facilities, transport facility, and the good lifestyle. All these facilities of the urban area enhance the status of urban women in a way that higher education leads to delay in marriages, better health facility uplifts their health status, availability of public transport increases their mobility and decreases their dependency on male members. Besides, they get more freedom and liberty. Better employment opportunities also increase women's role and participation in economic activities. The caste influence and societal pressure are not so strong in urban areas, thereby providing space for their development. It is also important to note that the condition of urban women varies as per the economic development of that particular area. Women in the metropolitan cities or big town are enjoying more benefits of development, whereas women from small towns are more or less in the same condition as the rural women are in. Due to cultural rigidity, rural women are facing more gender inequality than the urban women, while urban women are facing some other problems like working mothers require the facility of crèches. Housing problem is another major issue of urban life, which is giving way to the development of slum areas. Slum is an area within or outskirts of the city which lacks standard housing, basic facilities, and security. Migration from rural areas to more developed urban areas with the hope to earn more through higher paying manual labor by both men and women is the major reason for rise in slums. Men, women, and children work as construction labor, domestic help, rag pickers, street vendors, or run petty business. Poverty and alcoholism give rise to domestic violence and prostitution, while poor sanitary conditions produce many health problems. Low educational level is another problem, especially in the case of girls. Girls at a very low age join their mothers and start earning an income through some labor. Many of girls can be seen as picking rags, selling some small objects like flowers at the red traffic lights, or begging. They are at high risk of exploitation like incest, forced prostitution, and sexual abuse. So, students, let us now summarize what we have learned in this module so far. The issue of violence against women has been recognized as a basic human rights issue. Violence can be divided into community violence and family violence. There are various forms of violence against women like rape, kidnapping and abduction, sexual harassment, dowry, domestic violence, trafficking of girls and women, and the sexual harassment at the workplace. Several new forms of violence have been added after the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013, like voyeurism and stalking. There are a number of laws in place to deal with such crimes against women, but due to various reasons, the crime rate is on the rise.